Gerald Croft. Gerald Croft is Sheila Burling's fiancé and Mr. Burling's ideal son-in-law. He is described in the stage directions as manly and well-bred, indicating his confident, assured manner. This is in clear contrast to Eric's insecure, half-shy, half-assertive character. For example, Eric fumbles the engagement speech, whilst Gerald suavely reveals the engagement ring in a well-timed announcement. Before the inspector arrives, Gerald's views closely echo Mr. Burling's. For example, whilst Mr. Burling is making his completely inaccurate predictions about the future, Gerald chimes in with his support, particularly when Mr. Burling comments on what he expects will be a rosy economic future, for the employers anyway. Small wonder that Mr. Burling tells Gerald that he's just the kind of son-in-law I've always wanted. Gerald's family, the Crofts, are from old money, meaning that the family wealth has been established for a number of generations, whilst Mr. Burling is new money, as he has worked his way up the social ladder. Tellingly, Mr. Burling confides about the prospect of a knighthood with Gerald, not his own son Eric. Gerald's sycophantic support continues when Mr. Burling is being questioned by the inspector. He strongly backs Mr. Burling's actions in sacking Eva, in contrast to Eric's more sympathetic outlook. However, once his own involvement with Eva, or Daisy as he knew her, becomes apparent, he begins to change his attitude. He is generally moved and upset by Eva's death, giving her a humanity often denied her when she was alive by the combined actions of the Burling family. Once he stops foolishly resisting, under pressure from Sheila, who increasingly acts as the inspector's assistant, Gerald makes a full and frank admission of his actions. Perhaps surprisingly, this draws a degree of admiration from Sheila, who appreciates his honesty. True, she breaks off their engagement, but significantly she doesn't end the relationship, rather she resets it. As she says, they are different people now. Certainly, it is a chastised Gerald who meekly leaves the Burling household. At this stage of the play, Gerald seems well set on the same path as Sheila and later Eric, humbled and contrite. However, once he returns after the inspector has left, he begins to regress and return to his earlier views. This is because he works out that both the inspector and Eva's suicide are a hoax. Like Mr. and Mrs. Burling, he feels that this gets them all off the hook and makes all the difference. This, despite the fact that he really did have an affair with another woman the previous summer behind Sheila's back, and who he then turned out once it became too inconvenient. Gerald's relapse is symbolised by asking Sheila to take back his engagement ring. Just as he does so, the phone rings, and this time there actually is an inspector on his way to ask some questions about the death of a young woman. In some ways, of all the characters, Gerald is the biggest disappointment in terms of his final response to the inspector. It can be argued that it is inevitable that Mr. and Mrs. Burling remain stuck in their ways because of their age. They have spent decades being conditioned by society to behave in a self-centred way. Gerald, however, is young, and so should be more like Sheila and Eric, both of whom take the lessons the inspector teaches to heart. Indeed, this appears to be initially happening. But Gerald effectively retreats and realigns himself with the senior Burlings by the play's end. This is all the more frustrating, as even the inspector acknowledges that unlike everyone else, Gerald did at least make Eva happy for a short while. Through Gerald's flip-flopping, Priestley conveys the point that it isn't automatically the case that the younger generation will make the necessary changes for the better. Unfortunately, the selfish attitudes of the rich are deep-rooted.